Shabbat Shalom, family. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Give me a 1 if you can hear and see me okay in the chat. Ooh, okay, should be better now. Just bear with me, family. Just need to set up my other screen. There we go. Okay, so you can hear me and see me well. Great. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. And we've got a teaching today to go through for about an hour and a half, just talking about our Shabbat and how it is a sign. Now, hopefully you have seen the previous teaching that was on the community post and also is in the description for this video. One that I did with Brother Otis a few months ago. Hopefully you've seen that for some foundation. And by Yah's grace today, we'll also add further foundation to that. So we're going to make a start because there's quite a bit to get through. So once again, Sabbath greetings to you all in the chat room. Thank you for joining. Please do share the teaching with others so that they can also get this understanding. I'm gonna share my screen, just bear with me. It's in the time in okay. There we go. And family, this is a very important teaching today because I do think it's something that, as it says in the title, has been hidden in plain sight. So for many of us, it's something that we may still need to get understanding on. But by Yah's grace, we will get that today by education, and the Most High himself will give it to you by revelation. So let me share the screen. And so, family, we're going to jump straight into the teaching. And I pre-prepared this video in advance to make it easier for me to interact with you in the chat room. But what I will do is at some point of the video, I will pause it for a further discussion for those within the chat. And then probably next week, I will release the video on its own for those who weren't live. So for you who are live today, we'll have some interaction in the chat room. And there'll be a few questions I will ask you as we proceed, just so I can gauge your understanding of the teaching. So let me start the video. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. A few months ago, a teaching was released by the title of When Do We Keep Yah's Sabbath Day, where myself and Brother Otis went through a range of scriptures showing when the Shabbat starts. Now, when we did that particular teaching, we were only addressing the time in terms of on the seventh day, what time does the Sabbath start? And we were not dealing with the day of the week, because we knew that there was an issue in the body of Messiah with the lunar Sabbath, where this question had come up a few times by various people, and a teaching had to be done on that particular topic, addressing it and showing that it is not according to scripture. And so the links to all the teachings that I mentioned will be in the description of this video. Check those out in your own time. So the teachings for the lunar Sabbath have gone forth, and we have taught about how the lunar Sabbath isn't correct. And you can find all of those, as I say, on the channel. So on this particular teaching now, we are going back to the original teaching, which was about 45 minutes long, just going through a few scriptures with regards to the Sabbath and when it starts. And here we are going to build upon that teaching in order to give you understanding, which I believe is very critical in the times we're in these end times, because the Most High is doing something that he has always said that he will do. When he first introduced his children to the Shabbat, the meaning of the Shabbat and what the Shabbat represented, he said it would be a sign between him and his children throughout all their generations, in other words, forever. And so if the Shabbat is a sign, it means it is more than just a command that we keep. It has a more important meaning behind it, because it is what is going to distinguish, is what's going to sanctify Yah's children versus the rest of the world. And so if that is the case, we need to delve into this more so we can get understanding, so we can make sure that we know what the exact sign is. Now, the Most High is an Elohim of order, and he always does things in an orderly and precise manner, meaning that when he says he's going to give you a sign, that sign can be the only sign. It is not a sign that can be replicated or copied or edited. And these are some of the things we're going to see in this teaching. It is a sign that is going to be unique to his children and unique to those who he calls his own. And so we need to know what the sign is and make sure that we have the sign, we have the correct sign, because there can only be one sign, similar to what Messiah said when he was asked for a sign, and he said, a wicked and adulterous generation seek a sign, and only one sign will be given. And we know what that sign was. It was a sign of the prophet Jonas, that as Jonas spent 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so will the Son of Man spend 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And so he gave that sign and he fulfilled that sign. And that was the only sign, he said, that would be given to prove who he is. Despite all the miracles he did, that sign had to be fulfilled and proven. And it was. And since the Most High is the same yesterday, today, and forever, when he said that he was going to give the children of Yahsharal a sign, which will be throughout their generations, we have to know that that sign is also going to be exact and it's going to be unique. So we need to prove and know, understand, and accept what that sign is, and make sure that we have that sign if we are the children of Yahsharal. So I'm going to spend some time going through this teaching to give you some understanding on what the sign is and how we identify the sign, and make sure that the sign is in line with what is in our heart. And as I mentioned on a community post and also in the description of this video, that by Yah's grace, I'm going to give you the education on this understanding. Yah is going to give me the ability to educate you, i.e. to teach you on this particular topic. But what I cannot give you is the revelation of the actual understanding. The revelation of the understanding has to come from the Most High himself. So I would implore you to seek him out if you don't already understand and know what the sign is, so that you can have it in your heart. Because there are two things here. One is the education in the head. That's to give you the understanding by the scripture so that you can understand what it is saying. That is something that Yah can give me the grace to give you through teaching. But what I cannot give you is the understanding by revelation. That has to come from the Most High and from the Ruach HaKodesh. So you need to seek him out for that understanding if you don't already have it, and if you haven't got it by the end of this teaching. But separately to this, I prayed for all those that are his, that you will get the understanding, not only by education, but also by revelation. So let's jump into the teaching so we can really understand what the sign that Yah said would be a sign for the children of Yahsharal forever. Now, before I get into the teaching, I want to give you a brief bit of background about my personal journey, which is something when I came into the understanding and the knowledge of the Sabbath and the different feast days. That came roughly about 10 years ago when I started to learn about these feasts and obviously the weekly Sabbath and all the things that are entailed in Leviticus chapter 23. And then I did my best to follow and learn those things as best as I could. And so when I started to keep the weekly Sabbath, the 7-day Sabbath, roughly about 10 years ago. I was keeping it from sunset on the 6th day to sunset on the 7th day, which is in our modern day from Friday evening to Saturday evening. So it was a 24-hour Sabbath. And that is how my understanding was at the time and how I kept the Sabbath from 2015 to about 2022. So roughly for 7 years. And then at some point in 2022, the Most High started to open up my understanding with various things. One of them was to do with the lunar Sabbath, where this situation came up and I started learning about it and seeing if there was any truth in it. And this was something that as I studied more, I started to see it didn't seem to line up with scripture. But at the same time of learning about the lunar Sabbath, I also started to learn about the Sabbath that I was already keeping, which was a 24-hour Sabbath, and seeing if that was in line with scripture. And the Most High started to open up my understanding. So this was roughly in 2022, maybe midway through 2022, that I started to learn about this. And the Most High gave me more understanding on the topic. Now, during the course of this 10-year journey, I spent some time in various organizations in terms of from an assembly point of view or from a church point of view, if you will. And I also visited that political state that they call Israel back in 2018 and spent 10 days there during the Feast of Tabernacles, which they were observing over there. And at the time, I didn't know why, but I've come to realize that all of these things that were on my journey was an education process the Most High was giving me. And it was also making me a first-hand witness. So no longer would I be saying things on the basis of what I've heard. I would be saying things on the basis of what I'd seen with my own two eyes. So he was taking me through a journey by spending time in various churches, various assemblies, and also in that political state. I was able to see things with my own eyes. There were certain rumors I'd heard. There were certain things that had come to light that other people who maybe had visited these places had witnessed and they had mentioned. But until I went there for myself, I hadn't seen them with my own eyes. So the Most High took me on a journey over that course of 10 years in various organizations. And as I say, in that political state for 10 days, where I saw things with my own eyes. And that was to give me understanding and to make me as a witness to know these things when the time was right to come and teach about them, that I wouldn't be talking based on other people's experience. I'd be talking based on my own. So we're going to get into the teaching now. And as I say, by his grace, I will give you this understanding by education. But it is only the Most High. It is only through the Ruach HaKodesh that you can get the understanding through revelation. And that's something you need to pray for. So let's get into the teaching. This blueprint, which was established on day one, we find in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1, where it says, "In the beginning, Yah created the heaven and the earth." And verse 2 says, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Ruach of Yah moved upon the face of the waters." And verse 3 says, "And Yah said, Let there be light, and there was light. And Yah saw the light, that it was good, and Yah divided the light from the darkness." And verse 5 reads, "And Yah called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day." Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through to 5. So we see here that the Most High established the beginnings by creating the heaven and the earth. And when he started this creation process, the earth we find was without form, it was void, and there was darkness upon the face of the deep. And so the first thing Yah did when he started to create is he called for light to come. And when the light came, Yah saw that the light was good, and he divided the light from the darkness. So in other words, he separated the light from the darkness. He sanctified the light from the darkness. And note that it was Yah that saw the light and said it was good in verse 4. He didn't say the darkness was good. He said that the light was good. And that is something we really need to get into our understanding, into our psyche, so we can see how this means something throughout the course of this lesson. Yah called the light day, and he called the darkness night. Now, the light that he called day, I've put on the screen here the concordance in the Strongs, which is H3117, and it is the word in Hebrew Yom. And we're going to go into more detail to understand this word, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the concordance as well, because the concordance, whilst it is a tool that can be used, we have to use it with caution, and we have to rightly divide. Because remember, the concordance isn't the inspired word. It is not the word authorized by the Ruach HaKodesh. And in fact, many of the Gentile people are what come together to create the concordance. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be used, because it does have truth in it, but we have to rightly divide, because not everything in it is accurate. And when we use the Ruach HaKodesh as our guide, we're always able to see the contradictions. But for the benefit of this lesson and many others, we can use the concordance as long as we rightly divide, and it will help us get more understanding. So the day was called Yom, the light part of the day, and the evening, or the darkness, the darker part of the day, was called night. It was the Most High that separated the evening from the morning, or the night from the morning. And we see that the evening and the morning were the first day. So what we have just seen, what we have just read in scripture, is this first Yom you see on the far left is what we witnessed during Yah's creation week, the blueprint which was established. And that blueprint was established on day one. That day one was the first Yom, or the first day. And that day began at night, because when Yah started to create, it was darkness upon the deep, as it says in Genesis 1 and 2. And then he called for the light, and the light came. And when the light came, the Most High divided the light from the darkness. So you see in the first Yom that you have the night, and then the division where you have the day, which is when the light came. And the Most High said that the day, or the light, was good, because he was the one who did the division. He did the sanctification. And so day one, the first Yom, forms the blueprint for creation week, because every other day that followed day one had the same pattern, that there was night and day. The evening and the morning was the first day, the evening and the morning were the second day, and so on. And so it continued all the way to the seventh day. When the seventh day came, the same process took place, that Yah called that seventh day the Sabbath, because it was the day that was sanctified from the other previous six. So he called the seventh day the Sabbath, but it still had the same pattern of having the night first and then the daytime. And he sanctified that seventh day. He sanctified the Sabbath. So it still retains the same format as day one, except that the Sabbath is sanctified by the Most High. And so what you see on screen is the pattern of the blueprint, which will continue forever. And so once we've got this as an understanding, the rest of the teaching is going to fall in place easily. Because on this seventh day, or on the Sabbath, whatever you want to call it, the night comes first, or the evening to the morning is the first day, as it says in Genesis 1 and 5. So it is for the Sabbath. It's the evening to the morning is the first part of the day, and then the morning to the evening is the second part of the day. You add them together, you get 24 hours. But you have the Sabbath night, which is the first 12 hours, the dark period of the day, because the evening and the morning is what starts the day, from evening through to morning, and then from morning back through to evening. So you have the Sabbath, which is the whole period. You have the Sabbath night, which is the first 12-hour period of the night. And then you have the Sabbath day, which is the 12-hour period of daylight. And remember, it still has the same pattern as every other previous day, where there are 12 hours at night and 12 hours during the day. So this is the blueprint for the creation week. This is the blueprint for the beginning of establishing what the Sabbath is. That the Sabbath is a whole day period of night and day, and it is divided in half. The first period, i.e., the first 12 hours, is the Sabbath night, and the second 12 hours of daylight is the Sabbath day. If you get that into your understanding, when you start to see these scriptures, things are going to open up for you by Yah's grace. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, when Messiah was asked for a sign, he said only one sign would be given, and that was the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Matthew chapter 12 and verse 40. And so when the Most High, via his Son, was given a sign, the sign he gave was a sign that had to be fulfilled. It had to be accurate. There could be no deviation to it, because he knew in all his wisdom and foreknowledge that one day some pagan people will come along and say Good Friday to Easter Sunday was the sign. And that does not make 3 days and 3 nights. So he was very specific when he gave this sign, that it had to be exact. It had to be fulfilled to the exact T for you to know that that is the sign of the Son of Man, that he is the Messiah. And he fulfilled this sign, as we already know. There are teachings on the channel. Again, the links will be in the description about the previous teachings which show how the Sabbath week was fulfilled entirely by Messiah. But he gave this sign that 3 days and 3 nights would have to be the sign. So now, when we are looking at the sign of the Sabbath, we have to know that when the Most High is speaking, he is very accurate in when he is giving a sign. As it was with Yahusha's sign, he said it will be 3 days and 3 nights. So he used both terms, days and nights, to know that that was the sign. But when he gave the Sabbath sign, what did he say? What was the exact words he said? Did he use the term night and day, or did he just use the term day? Let's see what the scripture says. Now, as I mentioned, the concordance is something we have to use, but we use it with caution. But it does give us understanding. Now, this word day that you see highlighted, H3117, is the Hebrew word yom. And yom in Hebrew, talking about the root meaning, this is the key here, the root meaning, it is related to hot within the day, or the heat within the day. In other words, the warm hours of the day. And we see that this is the literal interpretation, that is from sunrise to sunset. So from morning to evening, when you hear this word day, or this word that is used that we call yom, this is in relation to the daylight period of the day. You find this in the Strong's, as I say, the reference is H3117, and it tells you literally that this is from sunrise to sunset. So from the morning to the evening. And where I say you have to use the Strong's with caution is because there are other things that they add in there that are not actually in relation to the word. And you can see some of those things that they've put in there on screen. But if you rightly divide it, if you use the scripture and you use the scripture in its context, it is quite clear to see that this word yom was referring to the hot part, or the warm part, or the light part of the day, i.e. the literal interpretation from sunrise to sunset. This is the meaning of this word yom. So bear this in mind as we go through, because we are going to see how this makes perfect sense as we start to open up the scriptures and see how the Most High is working with them. So we have now seen our creation week, our blueprint, and we have now seen the various meanings of this 7th day, which we class as the Sabbath. So the 7th day Sabbath, the day itself, i.e. the night and the day, the whole 24-hour period, is called the Sabbath. But the first part of the Sabbath is the Sabbath night or the Sabbath evening, and that is a 12-hour period of dark night. Then the second part of the Sabbath is called the Sabbath day, which is 12 hours of daylight, because we know that the evening and the morning makes the day. So when we have this understanding, we are going to see that everything falls in place and makes perfect sense, and it is not ambiguous if we allow the Ruach to teach us and to lead us. We will get the understanding. And going back to Messiah's sign, remember when Messiah gave his sign, he was very specific. He used the word 3 days and 3 nights. He used both days and nights because he was specifying exactly what he meant. He says what he means and he means what he says. So now when we look at the scripture, talking about the Sabbath command, we are going to see how easy it is to understand when the Ruach is with us and when we are putting things line upon line, precept upon precept. Let's look at it. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Based on what we've understood so far, what is the Most High referring to? Is he referring to A, the Sabbath, which is this? Is he referring to B, the Sabbath night, which is this? Or is he referring to C, the Sabbath day, which is this? So family, I'm going to pause it there to give you, those of you in the chat, a chance to answer this question. Is it A, B, or C? A as in the Sabbath day and night, B as in the Sabbath night or Sabbath evening, or C as in the Sabbath day during the daylight period? Just put your answers on the screen. And it's good to gauge these things because by Yah's grace, by the time we go through the teaching, it will be good to see if the understanding has changed or if you already have the understanding or if the teaching has helped change the understanding. So we've got mainly C's. I see one A, but we've got mainly C's. So that's good. Okay, let's continue. "6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work." Is the Most High referring to 6 days as in this whole thing as a day? Is he referring to this part of the day? Or is he referring to this part of the day? Because he said, in 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. So we have to understand the context of what the command is about. The command is about labor. So when the Most High says 6 days you shall labor, the question I'm asking, is he talking about the whole of the first yom, the whole of the second yom, the whole of the third yom, as in the night and day? A. Is he talking about the night period of each yom? B. Or is he talking about the day period of each yom? C. Because he said 6 days you shall do all your labor and your work. So what is he talking about? But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy maidservant, maiden servant, or nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is in thy gates. Again, he's talking about labor. So is he talking about the whole of the Yom? Talking about the Sabbath itself? Is he talking about the night period of the Sabbath? Or is he talking about the day period of the Sabbath? There's 3 possible answers. Which one is the truth? Based on what is written, taking the Most High at his word, that he says what he means and he means what he says. Remember the Sabbath day. 6 days you shall labor. These are the days, because we labor in the daytime. So when he says on the seventh day you shall do no work because it is the Sabbath, we know the whole period is the Sabbath, but he says the seventh day, which we know is the Yom, which is the daylight part. This is the Sabbath. And here he says, on that day you shall do no work, nor those of your household, or your animals, or the stranger that is in your gate. Verse 11 of Exodus 20, for in 6 days Yah made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. Question, when did Yah make all the creation? Did he make it here within all the night and day? Did he make it only at night? Or did he make it only during the day, the daylight hours? Remember, Genesis 1 and 3 says that he called for there to be light, and light came. And he said that the light was good, and he separated the night from the day, from the darkness from the light, calling that light good. So when he did his creation, was he creating this whole 24-hour period? Was he creating this 12-hour period at night? Or was he creating the 12-hour period in the day? Because it says in 6 days, Yah made heaven and earth, and the sea and all that is in them. So he made them in 6 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he rested on the seventh day. Wherefore Yah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So he blessed the Sabbath day, because this day he did not create, he rested, whereas the previous 6 days he was creating. And so he blessed this day. Did he bless the night? Well, he wasn't creating on any other nights. He was only creating in the day. So it would make sense that he blessed the day and hallowed it. He sanctified it. He separated it. And he rested on the seventh day. Now, in Yochanan, chapter 11, verses 9 through to 10, Yahusha answered and said, are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light in this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. So what Yahusha was doing here is he was making a distinction that there are 12 hours in the day. In other words, there are 12 hours of daylight. And in that daylight, if a man is going to walk, now he's used the word walk, which is a verb, but you can interchange that word walk with any other verb. You can interchange it with the context of working, which would be the same thing. If any man work in the day, he stumbleth not, because he has light in this world. In other words, you can see, because in daylight, that is when you can see, because of the sun. And so therefore you can do your work. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth. Again, you can interchange that word walk with work. Work is not expected in the night, because there is no daylight for you to see. It is a period for resting. So therefore we can already see that when Yahusha here is talking about working or walking, he is specifying that there are 12 hours in the day. And so when we come back to the Sabbath command and the commandments of creation for the week, the blueprint that we see, we know that this is when the Most High was working during the day, just like his son said the same thing here. They are the same yesterday, today, and forever. So the work of the Most High's creation and the work he expects us to do is here during the day. That's when we are commanded to work for 6 days. And on the seventh day, he says, no work on that day. This day is sanctified, and this day is blessed. It is hallowed. And this is the Sabbath day. Just like the command plainly says, Sabbath day. Sabbath day. You will find that all the days that are written in Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through to 11, refer to the hot part of the day, just like it said in the concordance that we saw earlier. So the Sabbath day, the daytime period, is what you keep holy. 6 days, the daytime period, you shall labor. You labor in the day during the hours of the sun and do all your work. But the seventh day, which is the Sabbath day, the seventh day, not this whole period, but the seventh day, that is the day of the Sabbath. And that's the day that you shall do no work, you or nobody in your household or your animals. For in 6 days, Yah is talking about the daylight period because that's when he was creating. In 6 days, he made the heavens, the earth, and the seas, and all that is in them. And he rested on the seventh day, the daytime period. And that's why he blessed it and he sanctified it and called the Sabbath day holy. This is the day that he hallowed. So yes, we know that this whole period is the Sabbath, but the Sabbath is divided into night and day. And the Most High is very clearly talking about the day when he says what period should be hallowed, not the whole 24 hours, just the day. The truth is in the scripture is plainly written. And if the Ruach HaKodesh is with you, it will give you understanding. And what I want you to get, Yahsharal, is that the Most High does not use words just for the sake of it. Because if he wanted you to keep this whole period, this 24-hour period holy, all he would say is remember the Sabbath, full stop, period. He wouldn't need to add the word day. He would just say, remember the Sabbath, keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahweh Elohim. In it you shall do no work, nor your son, your daughter, your maidservant, etc., etc. In 6 days Yah made the heaven and earth, the seas, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore Yah blessed the Sabbath. He would leave out the word day. He would just say he blessed the Sabbath, i.e. the whole of that period, and hallowed it. There would be no need for him to add this word day, this word yom, which refers to the hot part of the day. But the fact he's added this word day shows us that he is specifically talking about the day period. Otherwise, there'd be no need to add the word day. And when we look in the Strongs, we see what the root word of that is, which is the hot hours of the day, or the sunrise to sunset part of the day. So it's very easy to understand, but throughout the course of this lesson, you are going to see many different angles as to how we know exactly what the Most High is talking about. To be honest, this should be enough from here because it is as clear as day, excuse the pun. But we're going to continue because I know that the Most High wants to leave you with no doubt as to what he's talking about, especially since it is a sign. So this is the pattern: sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep, rest. That is the anomaly. If you can understand that, then you will understand the rest of this teaching. Now in Leviticus chapter 23, just one verse in verse 3, the Most High is giving a summary on the whole of Leviticus chapter 23 of his feast days and his Sabbaths, his weekly Sabbaths and his high Sabbaths with the feast days. And in verse 3, he says, 6 days work shall be done. Now, when the Most High is giving a summary, he's not going into much detail about the command because he's already told you in previous places, i.e. what we just read in Exodus, what the whole of the command is. So in this very short place in Leviticus 23, where he's given a summary, he's only given you the top line detail. But even within that detail, you can see the clue that he is referring to the Sabbath daylight period. He says 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest. Now we know that the work is done on those 6 days, and he said that the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest. But look at the clue he's given us. Not only is it a Sabbath of rest, it is a holy convocation. When do you have your holy convocation? Do you have it at night or do you have it during the day? Of course, it is during the day. So he has told you that the seventh day, daylight period, is the Sabbath of rest. And he has told you that a holy convocation is to be observed during that period, during that daytime period. And in it, you shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yah in all your dwelling. So this is the Sabbath of Yah. This is the holy convocation. This is the seventh day rest. So we can take the Most High Yah at his word, that he says what he means and he means what he says. That the evening and the morning, the evening comes first. It is the night period that comes first. And then the daylight period comes. And that together, 12 hours of each, makes a day period, a whole day, a 24-hour day. So all we have to do is just believe the Most High and believe what he said with his mouth and wrote with his fingers, and we won't have a problem. So now we are going to see further detail in the Most High's command about the when, where he says, keep the Sabbath day, sanctify it as Yah thy Elohim has commanded thee. So he is telling you the when. When is the Sabbath? The Sabbath is during the day. Keep the Sabbath day here. That is the when. Then he's going to tell you what? 6 days you shall labor. So he's telling you what to do. He's telling you that on these 6 days, those are the days for you to labor and to do all your work. But on the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yah. Thy Elohim, in it you shall do no work, nor your son. And now he starts to tell you the who. Who are the people that should obey this commandment? Your son, your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor any of your cattle, nor the stranger that is within thy gates, that your manservant and maidservant may rest as well as you. So he's telling you now the who is to keep the commandment, which is basically everybody in your household, including yourself. Those of you who are children of Yah, children of Yahsharal, true Yahsharal. He is telling you that you should keep the Sabbath day as the commandment because it is the 7th day, the Sabbath of rest. So he's told you the when, he's told you the what, he's told you the who, and now he is going to tell you why you are to do these things. He tells you, remember that you was a servant in the land of Mitzrayim or Egypt, and that Yah thy Elohim brought thee out. Question: when our ancestors were servants and slaves in Mitzrayim, how many days per week do you think they worked? So family, I will just pause the video there again for you to answer that question. Of a 7-day week, when our people, our ancestors were in captivity in Egypt, how many days do you think they worked in a 7-day week? Just put your answers in the chat. So I've got 17. I'm sure that meant 7 apples. Okay. Let's continue. It is very clear that when they were slaves, they didn't have a Sabbath day of rest. They worked the whole week. They worked every day that daylight sent. They worked every day. So the Most High is telling us why we are to keep this day. Because he said, when you were slaves, when you were captives in the land of captivity, you labored every day. You had no rest. And you cried out to me for years to deliver you. And so now that I have delivered you and brought you out of your captivity, I am making this seventh day a day of rest. So you can remember that it is me that brought you out with a mighty hand. And it is me that sanctifies you from the other nations. And it is me that gives you rest. And this is where he gives you rest, because it is the daylight hours, when normally if you were in captivity, you wouldn't have a Sabbath. You would be working during the day. Now, would you be working through the night? No, because even during transatlantic slave times, they would not have the slaves out at night for fear of them escaping, or for fear of them plotting and finding a way to get away from the slave masters. So they kept them under tight supervision, under lock and key. They were not having them out in open fields at night when they had no light to see. They were keeping them away. But every hour that the daylight sent, slaves were working. And so the Most High is telling us that on this Sabbath day, he has sanctified it. And this is the reason why. It is so that you remember that he brought you out of captivity and he gave you a day of rest, unlike your slave masters, which worked you every day. Forget the night period, because like I said, at night, they kept the slaves away for fear of them escaping. But the daytime, as soon as there was any sunlight, that's when they worked them. And the Most High is saying, I'm giving you the day off. That is your day of rest, so you can remember me. That is the why. Remember that you was a servant in the land of Egypt, and that Yahweh Elohim brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahweh Elohim commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day. Deuteronomy 5 verses 12 through to 15. So we see in the detailed commandment, when the Most High is giving us the detail of the when, the what, the who, and the why, he is very specific. He tells you exactly what you need to know, and he means what he says and says what he means. He uses the word Sabbath day. That is what he wants you to keep. And the reason why he uses the word Sabbath day is because he's being literal. He's telling you to keep the Sabbath day. If he meant the whole of the Sabbath, he would just remove the word day and say to keep the Sabbath, period. But he has specified that it is the daytime to keep the Sabbath day, because the daylight is the period that you would normally work. Very simple to understand. So now we are going to see what the sign is, and that the Most High Sabbath day, the seventh day period, is the sign. Exodus chapter 31 and verse 13 says, Speak thou also unto the children of Yahsharal, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Yah that does sanctify you. Verse 14 says, Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever does any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from amongst his people. And again, we know that work is done during the day. Verse 15, 6 days may work be done, i.e. during the day. But in the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, i.e. during the day. It is holy to Yah, and whosoever does any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Again, if the Most High meant the whole of the Sabbath, i.e. the 24-hour period, he would not be adding the word day here. He would just say, anyone who does any work on the Sabbath, he shall be put to death. But he specifies Sabbath day because he is specifically talking about that period. And when you see the man in the book of Numbers who was gathering sticks on the Sabbath, he would have been gathering during the day because that's when you can see. So he was gathering sticks. they were told that he should be put to death, just like the commandment says, because he was carrying or gathering on the Sabbath day here. Verse 16, wherefore the children of Yahsharal shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. So it is something to be observed perpetually, forever, for the children of Yahsharal. And the Most High is very specific, telling you that the work is not to be done on the Sabbath day. Verse 17, it is a sign between me and the children of Yahsharal forever. For in 6 days Yah made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. Verse 18, and he gave unto Moshe, when he had made an end of communion with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tablets of stone, written with the finger of Yah. Exodus chapter 31, verses 13 through to 18. So we see very clearly in this detailed commandment that the Most High goes into all the criteria needed, and he explicitly tells the children of Yahsharal that this covenant he is making with them is a sign between him and the nation of Yahsharal, the children of Yahsharal, and it is forever. And it is a sign that him, the Most High Yah, is going to sanctify those he makes the sign with, i.e. the children of Yahsharal. And that's why he says that you must keep this covenant perpetually, because it is an everlasting covenant throughout all generations. Now, this word we see underlined in red, which is sign. And again, we're going to use the Strong's Concordance. We must rightly divide, but we are going to get some understanding about what this word actually means. The Strong's reference is H226. And the word sign in Hebrew is pronounced oath. That is how we would pronounce it in the English. And I find that very interesting, that even though it's a completely different language, the word sign is pronounced oath, and we know in English that oath means promise. So I find it very interesting that this particular word, although it is a completely different meaning, it still has some kind of a link. And we know that the Most High is the author of all languages, so it's no surprise that this was done. Definitely not a coincidence. So this word sign, pronounced oath in the English, is what we find in Exodus chapter 31, verse 13. And now we're going to delve deeper to understand the meaning of sign, because the sign is Bear with me 1 second, family. Might just have to, not sure why the video has paused there. In the beginning is the first 12 Yom. And we have now seen the various talking about the Sabbath command. In 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. Do all your labor and your work. So what is he talking about? It will give you son, have the slaves af. That is how we would pronounce it in the English. And I find that very interesting. Sorry about that, family. The video seems to pause, but I'll just play it from here. Interesting that even though it's a completely different language, the word sign is pronounced oath, and we know in English. Can you hear me again all right? Just put a 1 in the comment if you can, please. Okay, great. All right, I'll continue. That oath means promise. So I find it very interesting that this particular word, although it is a completely different meaning, it still has some kind of a link. And we know that the Most High is the author of all languages. So it's no surprise that this was done. Definitely not a coincidence. So this word sign, pronounced oath in the English, is what we find in Exodus chapter 31, verse 13. And now we're going to delve deeper to understand the meaning of sign. Because the sign is... Where are we? 46. All right, family. For some reason, this video is not going past the 46 minutes. So I'm going to load it up on, just bear with me. Right, let me see if I can load it up on another platform. A distinguishing mark. It is a remembrance, a warning, a token, an ensign. It is a miracle. It is proof. It is evidence. And so the Most High is using this sign particularly because he wants his nation to be distinguished. He wants his nation to be identified. He wants his nation to be separated from the rest of the world. And so when we look up this word sign in the Strongs, as I said, it is pronounced oath in the English, and it is a mark, a distinguishing mark. As I said, a miraculous sign. It is an ensign. It is miracle. It is proof that the Most High is the one who has ordained the sign. So that is very important because we know that the Most High cannot be emulated. The Most High stands on his own. So when he gives a sign, that sign has to be unique to that person or those people or that nation he is giving it to. And again, I refer to this as we mentioned at the beginning. When Yahusha gave the sign, the only sign that would prove who he is, he said that that was the only sign to be given. And so that sign had to be accurate. It had to be fulfilled. And it had to leave us with no doubt that that sign was from above. And we see the proof of that in the scriptures, that Yahusha was in the grave, as he said, for 3 days and 3 nights. He was very deliberate in specifying exactly what the sign was. And so it is with the Most High sign for the Shabbat, that the sign, which is the Shabbat, because he said, you must keep my Shabbat forever, a perpetual covenant, he is also very deliberate with the sign, which is why he says, keep the Sabbath day, because he is distinguishing what part of the Sabbath is sanctified. Like I explained already, we know that this whole period here is classed as a Sabbath. The name of this day is the seventh day, or the Sabbath. And when I say the day, I mean the 24-hour day and night. It is all the Sabbath. But there is part of this Sabbath that is sanctified. And the part that is sanctified, as the scripture tells us time and time and time again, is the day, the 12-hour period. So this is the sign that the Most High has sanctified it, and only the children of Yahsharal will have that sign forever. And what the Most High has done with this sign is he has hidden it from the wise and the prudent. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 25 to 26, Yahusha answered and said, I thank thee, O Father, Almighty of heaven and earth, because thou hast hid these things from the wise and prudent, and hast revealed them unto babes. Even so, Father, for so it seemed good in thy sight. So Yahusha was referring to something that happened during his lifetime on this earth, where he rejoiced in his ruach and giving praise to the Almighty, because the Almighty had hidden truths from those who think they are wise, from those who think they are prudent, from those who think they are better than what they are. He hid it from them and revealed it to the babes. And this is the exact same thing the Most High has done with his sign for the Sabbath, the sign between the children of Yahsharal and himself forever, is he has hidden it from most people, especially those who are wise and prudent, in plain sight. In other words, he has made this sign very hidden, even though it's obvious at the same time. And only the Most High can do that. Only he has the wisdom to know how to withhold something from someone and reveal it to someone else. And where I say he has hidden the sign from most in plain sight, I'm not only referring to those from outside Yahsharal, I'm also referring to those within Yahsharal, those in the body, if they think they are wise and prudent. And this is the reason why many people still have not come to understand this sign. Because if you have not submitted yourself unto Yah, and if you are wise and prudent in your own sight, then there are things that are going to be withheld, things that are going to be hidden. And like Yahusha said, the Most High will reveal it to the babes, to those who are the children of Yahsharal, who are innocent in the sense of they believe in the Most High and they submit to him as a child. Like Yahusha said, you have to be childlike to enter the kingdom of Elohim. And this is what the Most High has done with this sign. But let's see some more detail. Now, the sign from Yah is authentic and precise. It cannot be a copy, a replica, a counterfeit, a variation, or an edit. It must be exact. We know the Most High is precise, deliberate in everything he does. So the sign he gives has to be exact. Now, there are many groups, many sects, many people that keep Sabbath from sunset on the sixth day, i.e. Friday evening, until sunset on the seventh day, i.e. Saturday evening, which is a 24-hour period. Many groups. And the Most High said that keeping the Sabbath day holy is a sign between him and Yahsharal throughout all our generations, to sanctify, which is to separate and to distinguish us from others. So bearing all of that in mind, would it make sense if Yah allowed the sign that distinguishes and separates us from others to be the exact sign as theirs? Would that make sense? Now look at this scripture in the book of Jubilees, 2nd chapter, verse 31, where it says, and the creator of all things blessed it, but he did not sanctify all people and nations to keep the Sabbath thereon, but Yahsharal alone. Them alone he permitted to eat and drink and to keep Sabbath thereon on the earth. This is very important. It is telling us that the Most High did not allow, he did not sanctify, he did not separate other people and nations to keep the Sabbath. It was only Yahsharal alone that he permitted to keep the Sabbath on this earth. And verse 33 of Jubilees chapter 2 says, this law and testimony was given to the children of Yahsharal as a law forever unto their generations. So going back to what I just said, if the Most High who sanctified the Sabbath and gave it as a sign for the children of Yahsharal, and did not allow other people or other nations to keep the Sabbath, to keep the sign, which we have seen is from him forever, would it make sense if he allowed these other nations, these other groups, these other people to have the exact same sign as what the children of Yahsharal would have? Let's think logically, Yahsharal, because the Most High is a logical Elohim. Would he give us the same sign that he's giving the people he's trying to distinguish us from? Now, there are many groups, as I mentioned, that keep a 24-hour Sabbath, i.e. from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. You are seeing some of these groups on the screen. And as I explained in the beginning, in the introduction, I have personally spent time in these organizations, and little did I know at that time, it was part of my journey and also to make me as a witness, so I would know first-hand experience that these people did these things. So has the Most High given this group of people, this organization, the sign that he said is a sign between him and the children of Yahsharal, the descendants of Yahsharal? Has he given them the sign? What about this group of people? Has he given them the sign to know that the sign between him and them forever is the seventh day Sabbath? Has he given them the sign? Because this group of people also keep the Sabbath from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. So has the Most High given them the sign, the exact sign that he gave his children of Yahsharal? And personally, I've never been part of this organization, but I know my mother, when she grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist home. And so she had the understanding of the Shabbat from sunset to sunset. But was he giving this group of people, this organization, the true sign of what the 7-day Shabbat is that we have already learned? How about this next group of people? Did the Most High give this group of people the sign that he said is a perpetual covenant forever? And I call this group of people the Revelation 2:9 and the Revelation 3:9ers. And I can assure you, after spending time in that nation back in 2018, they were certainly not given the Most High sign. Because if they were given the Most High sign, then that means they are the people of the Most High. And we know the scripture tells you that they are not. So think logically, Yahsharal. All these groups of people, and in this case, a whole nation, looking at this political state in Israel, a whole nation that keep the Sabbath from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday, has the Most High given them that sign? Is it the sign of the Most High? Because if it is, it means they have to be the people, because he very clearly said the sign will only be for the nation of Yahsharal, i.e. the true nation of Yahsharal, and their descendants, their children. So it's obvious that the sign they have is not his sign. It's their own sign. Now we're going to get into some literalism and some metaphors. One light is far greater than the other. Now in Genesis 1:16, we learn that the Most High created the luminaries on the fourth day. We find that from Genesis 1:14 onwards. And he made two great lights. The greater light to rule the day. We know that that light is the sun. And the lesser light to rule the night. We know that that light is the moon. He made the stars also. Now let's dig deeper into this to see the metaphor or the allegory behind what the scripture is saying. These four great works Yah created on the third day, And on the fourth day, he created the sun and the moon and the stars and set them in the firmaments of the heaven to give light upon the earth and to rule over the day and the night and divide the light from the darkness. And Yah appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths and for months and for feasts and for years and for Sabbaths of years and for jubilees and for all seasons of the years. And it divideth the light from the darkness, and for prosperity, that all things may prosper which shoot and grow on the earth. Jubilees 2:8 through to 10. So we know in the canonized scriptures, in the book of Genesis, it talks about the Most High creating the luminaries on the fourth day, and they were to be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. But when we go to the book of Jubilees, chapter 2, verse 8 through to 10, it gives us more detail about what the Genesis account is speaking of. And specifically in verse 9, it tells us that it's the Most High Yah that appointed the sun to be the great sign on the earth. And that sign on the earth would be not only just for days, but also for Sabbaths, plural, and for months, for feasts, and for years, and the Sabbath of years, which is like the 7-year sabbatical cycle, and the Jubilees, which is the 50-year Jubilee cycle, and for seasons for all the years. So it is the sun that is the great sign on the earth. And this is so great that in these last days, these scriptures that they removed from our canonized version of the scriptures are being restored, because we need this extra information as evidence so that we can understand in more detail what we already see in the 66 canonized books. Because the 66 canonized books does have enough information, but this just further solidifies it. We now see that it is the Most High who appointed the sun to be the great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths. And not only is the sun the sign for days and the Sabbaths, but as we know, if we know through even things like science, that we need the sun to live. The sun is linked to prosperity and being able to prosper and to grow on the earth. When you think of living organisms, plants, people, animals, we all need the sun. We all need the sunlight. So the sun is the great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths. And this is talking in a literal sense of the sun. But it is also talking about it in a metaphorical sense. And we're going to see that very shortly. In Psalm 113 and verse 3, it says, "From the rising of the sun until the going down of the same, Yah's name is to be praised." Now we know that Yah's name is to be praised at all times. Let everything that has breath praise Yah. But here it's specifically telling us from the rising of the sun, i.e. in the morning, until the going down of the sun, i.e. in the evening, Yah's name is to be praised. Why do we think it's telling us in that order, from sunrise to sunset? Because the sun is the sign. It is of Yah's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 through to 23. So Yah's mercies, Yah's compassion that do not fail are resumed every morning. When the sun comes up, that begins the morning, and it is then that his mercies and compassions are resumed. Now, why is it telling us this? Because again, the sun is the great sign. For his anger is but for a moment, and his favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning. The morning comes when the sun rises, and that's when joy comes. Psalm 30:5. So all of these scriptures we are seeing here is telling us of the good things that will happen at the rising of the sun in the morning. Yah's mercies and compassions are renewed. In the morning, joy comes after weeping may tarry through the night. What or who does the sun represent? Talking of the sun, the physical, the literal sun in the sky, what does that sun represent? HaMashiach is the light of the world, John 8:12. Hasatan, who we know was called Lucifer, was the light bearer, Isaiah 14:12. But he is now a fallen angel masquerading as an angel of light, 2 Corinthians 11:14. So in a metaphoric sense, there are two lights that were in this world. The light of the world, John 8:12, the Most High's Son, and in the beginning when he was created, the light bearer, who was Lucifer. And so when we go back to Genesis 1:16, and we see that it says Yah made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the greater light that rules the day is the sun, i.e. the sun in the sky, that we see from sunrise to sunset. That is the literal interpretation of the sun. But the metaphor is that the greater light that rules the day, the sun in the sky, also represents the son, which is the Son of the Most High, Yahushua HaMashiach. So he is the greater light. Then you have the lesser light. The lesser light rules the night. The lesser light that rules the night, when Lucifer was created, he was created as the light bearer, hence the name. And we know he fell from the heavens due to his pride and arrogance, and he was cut down, as we know. But he still tries to masquerade as an angel of light, as the scripture tells us. He is the lesser light, but now he is a light that rules the night. So there is a direct metaphor between the two lights that we see that are in the sky, one to rule the daytime and one to rule the night. And we know that the greater light is the sun, the literal light, the sun in the sky, and also the Son of the Most High. So if we get these understandings in place, we will see why the sun, sun, is the sign, just as the sun, son, is also the sign. He is the greatest sign because he is what the Most High has given the world. We just need to get understanding, and these things all fall in place. When the sun sets, i.e., when the sun goes down, it represents the death of the sun, the son. But when the sun rises, i.e., when the sun comes up in the morning, it represents the resurrection of the sun, talking about the son, the Most High Son. These are the metaphors that we see with the literal sun and moon that are in the sky. There is a direct, literal interpretation, as well as a metaphor that the Most High has hidden, so to speak, in the scriptures. And when we start digging into it, we actually see it come into life. So this is the reason why the sunrise is the sign from the Most High, because it is directly pointing us to the rising of his Son, the Most High Son, our Messiah. Sunrise is when we see the physical sun coming up, and it gives us a reminder that the Son resurrected and sits at the right hand of the Father. And so it is the sun that is the greater sign. The sun is the greater sign, as it says in Jubilees 2 and 9, that Yah appointed the sun to be the great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths. Now, the beginning tells a literal story, which is also a metaphor. Follow me very carefully. In the beginning, Yah created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of Yah moved upon the face of the waters. And Yah said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And Yah saw the light, that it was good, and Yah divided the light from the darkness. Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through to 4. So we know that this is the beginning. And if we follow this story literally, we understand how creation came to be. But I want you to pay attention to the metaphor within this story, within these 4 verses. Because first and foremost, it tells us in Genesis 1 and 3 that Yah called for light. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So the question is, what or who is the light in Genesis 1 and 3? Now we know, or should know, that the light in Genesis 1 and 3 was not the light from the sun or from the moon or from the stars, because this was day 1. There was no sun, moon, and stars. They were not made until day 4. So the light we see in Genesis 1 and 3, the light that the Most High called for, was not from the luminaries. Of course, it was the sun. It was his sun. The sun, from an allegoric perspective in the scriptures, is often interchangeable with the sun, i.e. the literal physical sun, the luminary that was made on day 4. So the light that came in Genesis 1 and 3 was the Most High Son, our Messiah. That's who was the light. That's what the Most High called light for. And so if you get this understanding, you start to see the metaphor that verse 1 says, "In the beginning, Yah created the heavens and the earth." And verse 2 says that the earth was without form, it was void, and it was in darkness. Now, when have you ever seen the Most High create something which is without form, which is void, and which has darkness? The Most High is a perfect creator. He will never create something that has no shape, and that's void, and that's darkness, and that's basically ugly. So it tells us that between Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2, something took place, because the Most High created the heaven and earth, and it seems like something came along and disrupted the creation. And we don't have time in this lesson, but if you go into other places in scripture, the Apocrypha, the book of Job, you can put line upon line, precept upon precept, and see that there was some things that took place when the Most High first created the heavens and the earth, some things that caused the rebellion, so to speak. It's in many places, you just have to put it together. And when that happened, when we get to Genesis 1 and verse 3, the Most High then started again. He said, "Let there be light." And he called light to come in to replace this darkness that was on the earth. And he saw that the light was good, and he divided, he separated, he sanctified the light from the darkness. So we know this is all literal, but it also is a metaphor, because it shows us that the Most High called for his Son. He called for his Son at the very beginning and said, "Let there be light." And when his Son came, when his Son showed up and illuminated the earth, the heavens and the earth, the Most High saw that the light was good. And then he divided the light from the darkness. And so if we know who the light is, i.e. the Most High Son, we know who the darkness is. The darkness is Hasatan, the one who used to be the light bearer. He divided his Son from Hasatan. He separated them. They were no longer on the same team. So it is the Son that we see in Genesis 1 and 3, i.e. the Most High Son, the S-O-N. And as I say, it's very often interchangeable with the physical sun, the S-U-N. Malachi 4:2 says, "But unto you that fear my name shall the Son, S-U-N, of righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall." So it is the sun in the sky that is going to give you your healing in a literal sense, because the sun is the greater sign. But this scripture is clearly, when you read it in context, talking about the Son of the Most High, the S-O-N, who is our Messiah. And so you can see that the luminary of the sun and Yahushua Messiah are often used interchangeably, because the sun is a great ball of energy. The sun is needed for living things to survive. And like Yahushua said, without him, you can do nothing. So we see that there is a direct correlation between the two. Now, these people here have a sign for their Sabbath. And the sign for their Sabbath, for their nation, the nation of Israel, the political state, is the disappearing of the sun. In other words, at sunset. Why? Because they reject the sun. They reject the Most High Son, his physical, literal son, the only begotten son. They reject him. The whole nation, in a sense, reject him because they don't believe in the sun. So their sign for their Sabbath starts at sunset, i.e. the disappearing of the sun. When the sun starts to set, when it starts to go down, that is the sign for their Sabbath, because they reject the sun, the S-O-N. Whereas the true nation of Yahsharal, the sign for our Sabbath, the children of Yahsharal, is that the descendants of Abraham, that we are, our sign for the Sabbath is the appearing of the sun, the S-U-N in the sky, i.e. sunrise, because we accept the S-O-N. We accept the sun. We accept Messiah. We accept Yahusha. So our sign for the Sabbath is, of course, when the sun appears. In other words, when the sun rises. And this is how the Most High has set it up, so that all other people who are not the true children of Yahsharal, and this particular political state, this particular nation, who are clearly the Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9ers, they have the wrong sign. They have the sign in the evening. They have the sign when the sun disappears because of their rejection of the sun. Our sign is when the sun appears, because we accept the sun. Can you see the metaphoric brilliance of the Most High and how he has used this sign, the only sign which identifies us as the true children of Yahsharal, is keeping the Shabbat from sunrise in the morning to sunset in the evening on the seventh day. So we have literally covered multiple points, and I'm going to briefly summarize and conclude them so you can have this full understanding that our Sabbath should be from sunrise to sunset on the seventh day. Number one, day and night was separated from the beginning. Daytime was sanctified by Yah by calling the light good. Number two, the root word for the word yom refers to hot, as in the warm hours of the day, which is sunrise to sunset. We saw that in the concordance when we did a little bit of digging and when we made sure that we rightly divided. Number three, when Yah says Sabbath day, he is being literal, the daytime of the Sabbath, which is why he says Sabbath day. He says what he means and means what he says. Number four, in every instance in Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through to 12, the word day means from sunrise to sunset. The context are in the verses. When you read the verses in context, you see that he is always referring to the daytime. Hence why he uses the word day or yom, from sunrise to sunset. And work in context of the Sabbath command, is always done in the daytime, including Yah's creation week. So when we work during the daytime. I know we live in a society now where you have 24-hour shops and people have night shifts and all these things, but we're talking about in context of when these things were established thousands of years ago, that work was done during the daytime. And not only our work, but also the Most High's work on creation week was done during the daylight hours. Number 6, Yahusha tells us that there are 12 hours in the day to walk, or to be active, or to work. They're all interchangeable, and because we have light to see. So when Yahusha says 12 hours in the day, he is always referring to the daytime period from sunrise to sunset. And that tells us that that's also the time we should be resting or sanctified when the Most High says to keep the Sabbath day. Number 7, the detail in Exodus and Deuteronomy for keeping the Sabbath day tells us when, tells us what, tells us who, and tells us why. Those commandments go into detail, and the Most High means what he says and says what he means and uses the term Sabbath day. Number 8, in Leviticus 23:3, it shows us that 6 days, i.e. the daylight hours, are for working, but the Sabbath day, i.e. the daylight hours of the Sabbath, is to rest with a holy convocation. The holy convocation gives us the clue to show us when the Sabbath is, because he's telling us that we should rest and have a gathering, and we know that we have the gathering during the daylight period. Number 8, the Sabbath is an authentic, unique sign of sanctification to distinguish true Yahsharal from everybody else. Number 10, the Hebrew word used for showing the Sabbath is a sign is pronounced oath in English. Oath means a solemn promise. Definitely not a coincidence. Number 11, the sign is hidden in plain sight from the wise and prudent, both inside and outside the nation. It is revealed to the babes. So the sign that the Most High has given and has hidden in plain sight will be hidden from those who think they're wise and prudent, even if you are from Yahsharal. Only the babes will it be revealed to. This is the brilliance of the Most High. And number 12, Yah's sign cannot be stolen or counterfeited by any unauthorized person or nation. It is only for Yahsharal. The scripture makes that very clear. Number 13, if any other nation has Yah's given sign, which is keeping the Sabbath on the Sabbath day, i.e. from sunrise to sunset, then they are true Yahsharal. And number 14, there are many people, many groups, and a specific nation that we have already seen that keep a Sabbath for 24 hours from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. And we know that that cannot be the sign, because as number 13 says, if they have the exact sign of keeping the Sabbath on the right time, then they have to be true Yahsharal. And we know for a fact that they are not. Continuing, number 15, Yah made 2 great lights, but the far greater light was the one that would rule the day, and the lesser light was the one that would rule the night. And we've also seen that that is a metaphor for Yahusha being the greater light that rules the day, and Hasatan being the evil light that rules the night, the light who was once of the Most High. Like the scripture says, "Oh, how thou art fallen, O Lucifer, son of the morning," when he was called with beauty and wisdom until iniquity was found in him. So he lost his status as being the light bearer. And so we can see the metaphor or the allegory between the 2 luminaries in the sky and the representation of Yahusha Messiah and Hasatan the devil. Number 16, Yah appointed the appearing of the sun to be the sign on earth to determine the days and the Sabbaths. We saw that in Jubilees chapter 2 and verse 9, that it is the sun the appearing of the sun, that is the sign to determine the days and the Sabbath, not the disappearing of the sun, which would be sunset. It has to be from sunrise to sunset. That is the appearing of the sun. 17, the scriptures talk about Yah being praised from the rising of the sun to the going down of the same. That is the pattern for the Shabbat, from the rising of the sun to the going down of the sun. Number 18, Yah's compassion and mercies are renewed each morning at sunrise. The morning starts at sunrise. That's when Yah's compassion and mercies are renewed, because the sun is the great sign, and not just the physical sun, S-U-N, in the sky, but his literal son, his only begotten son. Yah's mercy and compassion comes through what his son achieved for us, his death, burial, and resurrection. And that is why the sun, S-U-N, in the sky, is a direct representation of the Son of the Most High, the S-O-N, when his compassions and mercies are shown. Number 19, weeping may last through the night, but joy comes in the morning. And the morning, we've seen time and time again, is at sunrise. And as I just mentioned, number 20, the sun is a physical representation of Yah's son in an allegoric sense. It is needed life for all living things. The sun in the sky is needed for life, and the sun, the Most High Son, is needed for life, and life more abundantly. Number 21, more allegories in night light versus daylight. Lucifer, who was once an angel of light, but now is a fake angel of light who masquerades as an angel of light, versus Yahusha, who is the true light of the world, as the scripture tells us. Number 22, the sunset represents the death of the S-O-N, and sunrise represents the resurrection of the S-O-N. Which one is the greater sign? Of course, it is the resurrection. The resurrection of Messiah is the greatest sign we have ever seen. And that is what we see when we interchange Messiah, S-O-N, with the sun that's in the sky. They are interchangeable, as I've already explained. And number 23, the sun is the light that's introduced in Genesis 1 and 3. And the sun was called good. And when I say the sun, I'm talking, of course, about the S-O-N, the Son of the Most High, because we know that the sun in the sky, the luminary, was not made until day 4. And number 24, Israel, the political state Israel, start their Sabbath when the sun starts to go down. In other words, when the sun disappears, that's when they start their Sabbath, because they don't accept the sun, the S-O-N, they don't accept the Most High Son. Whereas number 25, the true nation of Yahsharal start their Sabbath when the sun starts to rise and appear, because we do accept the sun. So when the sun appears, that is our sign that our 7-day Sabbath has begun. And that is the part that is sanctified, because it is from sunrise to sunset, roughly 12-hour period. So we've come to the end of the teaching, hopefully one that has given you much understanding by education through the scriptures and through the understanding of how the Most High has hidden things in plain sight. Now you need to get the understanding through revelation, something, as I said before, only the Most High Yah can give you. So ask him in sincerity and in truth if you still haven't understood that the Shabbat starts from sunrise to sunset, that the sanctified part of the Sabbath is from sunrise to sunset. If you still haven't got that revelation through the Ruach HaKodesh, then ask the Most High to give it to you in sincerity and in truth. Because he made that sign for us, because he wants to separate and identify who we are, who his true children are. He wants us all to get this thing. And this sometimes can be a process, as I explained throughout the course of the teaching and at the beginning, that I practice keeping the 7th-day Shabbat from sunset to sunset for about 7 years. That's how I had the understanding of it at that time. But through time, through experience, through various things in life, the Most High took me on this journey to get me to understand what the true sign is. And now he's given me the ability by his grace to teach that to the nation. And ultimately, I'm just a messenger. If you don't believe it, take it up with the Most High, because he is the one who inspired these words that we read in our scripture, these literal words. When he keeps saying Sabbath day, he says what he means and he means what he says. So hopefully, by his grace, to all those that are his, you've understood this by education, and you have also received the revelation that the Most High is telling you that the Sabbath day is from sunrise to sunset on the seventh day. And if you haven't, just be sincere in your heart and pray to him that he gives you the revelation and understanding so that you can know that this is the sign and therefore keep it, because it's the only thing he's going to use to identify his children. He has clearly told us in scripture this sign was only given to the nation of Yahsharal, the true nation of Yahsharal. So any other nation following a variation of this sign will prove that they are not the children of Yahsharal. So please get this understanding from the Most High. I pray that this finds you in your right mind and gives you the understanding as the Most High wills. So I'll leave it here. Thank you for tuning in. Please do share this teaching, like the teaching, and subscribe as you are led. Until then, until the next time, to all those that are his, may the Most High Yah bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift his countenance upon you, and may he give you shalom. Okay, family. So I hope you have got the understanding from that teaching, and going by the majority of comments in the chat room, I feel like you do. So it's opened up really for questions and answers that are needed that the teaching didn't clarify. So feel free to put your comments or questions in the chat room. But as I always say, ultimately, all I am is a messenger. I give you the message, and it's up to you to believe it or not. It's up to you to take it up with the Most High. And like I said during the teaching, this may be a process for many people, because I spent my time at the beginning, like I said, for roughly 7 years. When I first learned about Sabbath, that was the understanding that I had from evening through to evening. And it's only through experiences, through time, through certain things happening, and delving deeper into the scripture and asking questions like, how comes this Sabbath that is supposed to be for the true children of Yahsharal, when we start finding out who the children are, how comes we see another nation, a whole nation, keeping this Sabbath the same way as us? Why are they doing the same sign as us? Does that mean that they're the children? And then you start to ask questions, you start to delve deeper, you start to study the scripture in more detail, and you get the answer. You get the answer because the Most High used a sign, and he hid it in plain day. He hid that sign from others so that they would not have the understanding. And that's why I say it may be a process that it takes time for you to get to that understanding. It can only be given through revelation. It can't be given through education. It's only the Most High that can reveal it to you. So if you are sincere in your heart and want to really understand it, he will reveal it to you. But that's the key. It has to come from him. It can't come from somebody else. So let me see if there are any questions that need to be answered. To be honest, I didn't see any. I did see, well, it wasn't so much a question, it was a comment. Let me see if I can find it. I think it said something about, well, what do you do in that case on the Sabbath evening, or what do you do from sunset to sunrise? And during the teaching, I showed you a pattern of sleep, work all the way through. And then the last day was rest, which was the 7th-day Sabbath. So what you do, as many people like myself does on that period, is you prepare for the Sabbath. You prepare for it because you know that when the Sabbath starts at sunrise to sunset, you are going to be keeping the command, not be working, not doing all the things that you're supposed to, that you normally do on the previous 6 daylight hours. So clearly, all you do on that period that you have is you just prepare, make sure that all your things are in order so that when the Sabbath starts, you don't have to think about doing any preparation because your preparation is done and you can just keep the Sabbath. But you have to seek out the Most High for his confirmation to you, for his instruction to you as a person. But like I said, the pattern is sleep, work all the way throughout the week until the last day where it's sleep and then rest rather than work. And that's where the anomaly is. So that shows us that that's what the sign is. Otherwise, Exodus 31 and 13 doesn't make any sense because the Sabbath isn't a sign, since lots of other people who are not the children of Yahsharal are keeping. It has to be the children of Yahsharal. So what I will ask for those of you in the chat room, what would you say out of the teaching was something that was new to you, something that I suppose gave you a different understanding or in more detailed understanding to what you already had about the Sabbath? If you just put it very top line in the comments, just for my understanding, because even as I was preparing for the teaching, there were some things the Most High revealed to me that I hadn't seen before. I hadn't seen the metaphor or some of the scripture. For example, Jubilee 2 and 9. I think I had probably read it before, but it didn't stick out to me. That when we read Genesis 1 and 14, and we know that he made the stars and the sun and the moon, which are to be for signs, for seasons, for days, and for years, when we read that, we see it as all the luminaries. But when we get to the Jubilees account, it goes into detail and it specifies that it is the sun that was made for those signs. And so if we believe that scripture, it gives us further evidence to say, oh, wow, it's actually clear in scripture that the sun is the sign. And so that was something I learned whilst I was preparing for the teaching. So let me know if there are anything specifically that you learned. I see, Sister Lizette, you said the same thing. Basically, the sun was a sign. The emphasis on Sabbath day. Liza Lawal says, rather than just a Sabbath. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Council Girl says the day and night of the 12-hour difference. I think you might be referring to when Yahusha said, are they not 12 hours in the day? So there are various angles that we can learn more about this particular command. And when you add them all together, they all lead to the same thing, that the evidence is very clear as to what the sun is, the sun in the sky, talking about the sun, and what the sun represents. And so when we see these angles, it all does just add up together to give us the evidence that we need. And what I like mostly about the way how the Most High works is that he uses something very simple that those who get it. And then he uses something very simple to overcomplicate those who are not supposed to get it. And then they do all sorts of other variations. And that is just the brilliance of the Most High, that he can hide something in plain day. And then when he's ready to take the scales off your eyes and give you the revelation, you will see it and be like, how did I not see that before? It was there all the time. But that's the proof that it is the Ruach that leads us and gives us the understanding, not our own intellect or intelligence, or not our own, as the scripture says, those that are wise and prudent. That doesn't help. We need to be childlike, and we need to be humble before the Most High, and then He will give us this understanding, especially when our hearts are sincere and want to do the right thing. So I understand for some people it may be something difficult to accept because you've been indoctrinated into the system of the world, so to speak. But within time, if the Most High wills, He will open up your eyes. And for many of us, as I said, it has been a journey. It's not something that we just learned overnight. It took time. And I don't believe we have that amount of time left. So I'm sure it's not going to take that long for those who are supposed to get it. But for those of us who are still searching, the Most High will reveal it to you if you seek it out in sincerity and in truth. Let me just see a comment that said, okay, Sister Lizette says also how you broke down the when, what, who, and why. Yes, that is quite important. Deborah said, I learned the interchanging of the sun and sun as in S-U-N and S-O-N in the scripture. Yes, that's a very big one. And Ray said, there are people who work at night. If they work Shabbat night, are they breaking the Sabbath? This is the understanding I have. And again, the scripture is clear as to what part of the day is sanctified. Now, personally, I mean, I don't work at night on any nights anyway, so that doesn't affect me. But for me, if I have been given time to prepare for the Sabbath, then working, I go into work, is not preparing for the Sabbath. So when you finish work, how will you then be able to have your Sabbath, i.e. your daytime Sabbath from sunrise to sunset? How will you be able to observe that if you haven't prepared for it previously? But what you need to understand is that the commandment is sanctifying the Sabbath day. And so the previous 6 days where you were working, on the 7th day, you're not going to work. But on the previous 6 days, or the nighttime part of the day where you were sleeping, when it comes to the 7th days, i.e. the nighttime period, you're going to be doing the same thing that you were doing on those days. You're going to be sleeping because it is the daytime that is set up for work. So the pattern doesn't change at night. The pattern only changes during the day. That's how it was designed to be a sign, because there's only one part of the 14-point pattern. If you divide the week, a 7-day week, into 2, day and night, you've got 14 parts of the pattern, and 13 of them were the same pattern. It was only one, which was the Sabbath day, daytime, that would be different. So make of that what you will, but it is the daytime part that is the sanctified part. That is the time when the commandments are in place for the Sabbath day. And when you look through various scriptures, the test with the manna, when you look in the book of Nehemiah, I think it's chapter 13, about when the Sabbath gates were closed, many people point to that and say, yeah, the gates were closed in the evening. So that shows that the evening is when the Sabbath starts. But the gates were closed in the evening to prevent people coming in on the Sabbath day when they were coming in to buy and sell and do all these things. They were doing that during the daytime, but the gates were closed in the evening so that they wouldn't come in at all, so that the place would be shut for the whole period. Just like when a shop is closed, you're not going to go and stand outside the shop if it's already closed. You're just going to go home. So the gates were closed before the Sabbath started in the daylight hours when the people would be selling. But many people look at these things and they just misunderstand them because they don't see the original command. Once you see the original command, once you're opened up, once the scriptures open up and you understand when the Sabbath is, and then you go back and read all these other accounts, you see by clear daylight that the Most High is talking about the 7th day during the daytime period. But you have to get the command first. That's the key. You have to get the actual command before you can understand the other parts of scripture. And it's all there. These are things that are all written, especially in the book of Jubilees, which is definitely a source that was removed because of these reasons, because it has too much extra information that just makes what we already know even more solidified. So I'm just going to see if there's any other comments. Nope, I think that is it. One thing is this teaching will be re-released probably by next Sabbath, and it will just be the video, obviously without all the questions and the interaction from us. So that will be the shorter version. I think it's about an hour and a half. So you can obviously share this by all means, but also when that one comes out, even though you may have already seen it, please do still share it, because that one will be the shorter version. And I know for some people, they prefer slightly shorter videos because just of attention span and those things. So do look out for that other teaching, well, the same teaching, but on the other video. Which day is the preparation day? Well, the preparation is before the Sabbath, isn't it? So if the Sabbath day is the bit that's sanctified, i.e. from sunrise to sunset, then the preparation day is the day before that day. And that period that you prepare is whatever preparation you need to do, you're doing it in order to observe the Sabbath on the seventh day, i.e. from sunrise to sunset. So the day before that is the seventh day, is the, preparation day. But just remember, it says in 6 days you shall labor. So you are working 6 days. And when you finish your 6th day of work, you prepare for your Sabbath. And then when the morning comes from sunrise to sunset, you keep your Sabbath. So the preparation day is just a day before the Sabbath, when you have finished your 6 days of labor. The Most High gives you time to prepare, just like he does for all his feast days. He gives you time to prepare so that you can observe the feast day. All right, family, I think we are going to leave it there. Thank you all for joining and for your participation. And again, for those of you who have the understanding by education and now by revelation, all praises to Yah that he has given you that. And for those that only have it by education and not by revelation, I pray that you will receive it in due course. And for those that don't have it by education or by revelation, I pray that you seek out the Most High for understanding, because it's only him that can give you revelation. All we can do as messengers is teach the message we've been given, and it's up to you to accept it or not. That is not our argument or fight. But the Most High is very merciful, and he does give us the time to get these understandings when we are sincere. And as I say, it doesn't always come overnight. Sometimes it's a process, but if he is willing, then that's something that you will get. So I will leave it here, family. Thanks once again for joining. Look out for the re-release of the video, and please do share and like that one, because that will be a shorter format. But for now, to all those that are his, enjoy the rest of your Shabbat. May the Most High bless you and keep you, and cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift his countenance upon you, and may he give you shalom. Shabbat shalom, family.